We are indeed privileged to have with us Mr. Rosario, the resource person of this session. Rosario is a performance-driven petroleum engineering professional and entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience in the oil and gas industry. Please welcome him with a huge round of applause.
Can I use this one? All right.
A special word of welcome to our enthusiastic student delegates and their parents, as well as their dedicated teacher coordinates. Please join me in giving a hearty round of applause as we welcome Mr. Rosario to address us on powering the world's energy future.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, can everybody hear me well? Yes. Okay. Good to see a lot of girls here as well for the oil and gas career talk, and the boys at the back. Okay, so it's going to be very difficult to follow Sri Yukta, but I'll try after everything that she's achieved. I used to be one of you a long time ago. I used to study in Indian school Al Gubra back in the day. So I don't know if anybody from ISG here. Okay. This is the thing for the slide. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so today we'll be talking about oil and gas. All right. A bit of an introduction, like I said, about myself. So my name is Ian Rosario. I have a master's degree in petroleum engineering, as well as a bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering and oil and gas technology. Like I said, I studied in ISG in Gubra until the 7th grade before moving on to Dubai, a little bit in India, and then I did my undergraduate degree in Australia, and I did a couple of master's degree in the UK, in Heriot-Watt. I see a lot of you probably are venturing into college soon, so it's a good opportunity to talk to you guys and maybe tell you a few things that I wish I knew when I was at your age. So, who here knows anything about petroleum engineering? Do you want to put your hands up? Anybody has heard about oil and gas, petroleum engineering? Anybody wants to get into petroleum engineering? I see the guy in the back. He can stand up and tell me about it. Go ahead. No? Okay. Well, the whole purpose of this presentation is for you to find out, right? A lot of people, including myself, I didn't know there was a petroleum engineering degree out there when I was in high school. But there are a lot of specialized degrees in the engineering sector, and petroleum engineering is one of them. So, me at your age, I'm assuming 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, I was sitting in the back, just like all of you there, pretty much making fun of the guy who was standing up here presenting, right? And I was also very naive and definitely oversmart. I was definitely nervous about college, even though I said I was excited. I was going to move out of home at 17, stay in Australia by myself, which was fun and exciting. But I didn't even know whether I would pass my boards to actually achieve that, right? So, yeah, luckily I did. But again, right, well, I had an option of getting into aeronautical engineering, oil and gas, maybe mechanical, maybe staying back home for 4 years and continuing my undergraduate, or I could just stay with my parents for 4 years, right? But at the end of the day, like, how do you know? How do you make that choice, right? I'm sure some of you are very, very sure on what you guys want to be, what you girls want to be. Some of you want to be doctors, some of you want to be engineers, some of you want to be lawyers, some of you want to be astronauts like I did. But there's still a chance for me, but we'll see about you guys. So what got me interested in oil and gas? So that's a good question that I asked myself quite a bit over these last couple of weeks. And to be honest, looking back at it, the right answer was there wasn't an aha moment, or there wasn't any particular moment that I can think back on where I could say, you know, I really wanted to get into the oil and gas industry. I didn't know anything about it. My father, he was a petroleum engineer with PDO and Shell, KOC, some of the big oil and gas companies. And it wasn't even like I wanted to be like him. It was just something that I knew existed that a lot of people didn't, right? But at the end of the day, was it the right choice for me? I can probably say that right now. Yeah, it absolutely was. Did I know back then? Definitely not. So, is this what I do? So if I'm not here, I'm on the oil rig getting muddy and dirty? Not really. Every day is a new challenge, a new experience. There's a lot of problem solving. You get the opportunity to meet a lot of people from all across the world. And if you're good at what you do, you know, you end up doing well. Any questions so far about me? No? Okay. That was the interesting part, sadly. This is going to be a little bit of the boring bit. Feel free to nod off at the back, but I'll be quizzing you guys later. Okay, so pay attention. Okay, so oil and gas, right? It's got a bit of a rough name recently, at least in your lifetime, right? It's pretty dirty. It's not green, that's for sure. But then why do we still talk about it, right? I'm sure all your teachers have done a great job to explain to you that even today, oil and gas accounts for over 50% of the world's energy supply, right? What does that mean, right? What is energy? What is energy independence? You guys are probably too young to understand. I'm probably too young to understand. But there was a point in time where the lights used to flicker, you know? All of these, probably not tube lights, but all of the incandescent lights used to flicker, right? Why did they flicker? Because the power, the voltage, the power ran out a lot, right? So the definition of a rich country, the first main factor is to have a strong energy independence, right? And a lot of that comes from oil and gas. If you can see, even now, about 50% comes from, as they call, non-renewables, more than 50%, right? Is that a good thing? It's a good question, right? So at the end of the day, there is a reason why the world is trended towards non-renewables, but the most important factor is efficiency, right? And economics. I don't know if you guys have been to the Palm Jumeirah in Dubai, but this is not the Palm Jumeirah, right? I had a little bit of surprise there, but this is actually an oil and gas field, right? So, how is this an oil and gas field, right? How is this an oil and gas field? Oil and gas and a lot of minerals, they are present underneath us, right? They can be on land, they can be offshore. In some cases, we build massive platforms, which are in some cases almost as tall as the Burj Khalifa, but like an iceberg, you can't see them. You can only see them from the top. And in some cases, we actually reclaim land, so we don't have to build the big offshore rigs, right? So what is petroleum engineering? Petroleum engineering is just a branch of engineering. I should know this. I'm kidding, I do. It mainly focuses on extracting and producing oil and natural gas, right? But is it that simple? I mean, do we know where the oil is? Do we know where all the oil is? Do we know where all the gas is? Actually, we do. We do know where most of it is, at least. The most difficult thing is to ensure that we understand whether it's economic enough to bring out from the ground and then eventually get into your petrol pumps or gas stations, right? So that's the key bit. So in order to do that, we have to be able to drill. We have to be able to what we call reservoir manage, or simulate what's in an oil and gas reservoir, be able to produce it efficiently, and be able to process it and transport it and export it to other countries, even all around the world, right? So while you think of petroleum engineering as maybe a small branch of mechanical engineering or chemical engineering, it's actually its own discipline with various different incorporations of a lot of other engineering techniques, including mechanical, including chemical, including a lot of pressure management, including a lot of economics, including sometimes getting your hands dirty as well, right? It's divided into upstream, midstream, and downstream. If you guys may have heard about it, upstream is pretty much from the ground, subsurface, everything from the reservoir all the way up to the surface. Midstream is moving it on surface from an oil field, or what we call a wellhead, to a refinery. And downstream is now the oil that comes out, which is black and sometimes thick like honey. It's like refining it, ensuring that it's separated into things that you can actually use, right? Okay, quick question. Let's see who knows. Before oil and gas, or before oil, what did the world use for oil? Anybody knows? Okay, put your hands up. Okay. Coal. Coal, yes, they did use coal in steam turbines and steam engines, but what did they use? Say again? Fossil? Fossil oil? I always say there's no stupid answers, so, but no. But close, right? Not really. What they used was whale oil, right? Do you know what whaling is? Again, right? A long time ago, 100 years ago, there was a lot of whaling. They used to kill whales to extract oil from whales, right? Sometimes use vegetable oil, animal extracts, and light what? Candles, right? Right? So what happened then? Somebody realized there was some black stuff oozing from the ground in California and said, hey, can we not use this instead? It seems like oil. And then they started refining it. They started extracting kerosene that they could use for lamps. And then suddenly they stopped whaling, right? So if you look into it, it was a technology advancement in terms of how we extract a hydrocarbon. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna rush through this a little bit, but the reason I put these next few slides is because it's my duty to educate you on the different sectors in the oil and gas industry. Okay. So we first start out with exploration. What's exploration? We're sort of like Charles Darwin or Christopher Columbus, looking out, traveling the seas, but not searching for India or the new world, but searching underground for oil and gas constantly. But how do we do it? We do it kind of old school, just pretty much sending an acoustic signal down and then hearing it back and seeing, can we map out the rock deep, deep, deep underground? Sometimes approximately 10 kilometers underground, which is from probably here to, I don't know, city center, right? Underground. Just a big truck. It's the best photo I could find of onshore seismic surveys. But yeah, this is where we go. We go in, we set up some geophones on the ground in the middle of the desert sometimes and hunt for oil. Or we go offshore in the ocean and pretty much do the same thing, right? It's a big world out there, right? A lot of people have spent a lot of time running geological surveys. A lot of people, a lot more smarter and braver than us, have done that. And now, a lot of the world, including the oceans, have been mapped. So we have a good idea where the oil and gas reservoirs are. However, we know where they are, but we still got to understand how much oil is actually in those reservoirs, right? What is a reservoir? A reservoir is just a rock. It's not a pool, it's not an open space. It's a rock, like the mountain that you see, where within the pores of the rock, oil and gas is stored. What do you think is stored in the mountains in Oman? It still has pores. Sometimes it's got water, which is why you have your wadis, right? But most times it's air, right? Air is still a gas. Similarly, deep, deep down under the Earth's surface, you've got oil, water, and gas. So once we find it, we have to understand what's the volume of hydrocarbon that's there. And once we know the volume, we've got to find out, is it worth bringing up to the surface? Because everything is economics. And that's what a reservoir engineer would do. In fact, I majored in reservoir engineering. Again, stock photo. That's not me in any way. But probably be sitting around a computer and simulating, doing a lot of software modeling, doing a lot of P10, P90 analysis, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of data crunching, a lot of IT work, right? Just to understand where and how economic the oil and gas recovery is. And once you do, and you realize, okay, a lot of really wealthy people want to spend a lot of money to now invest and extract the oil and gas. So what do you do now? You got to drill, right? So what is drilling? Drilling is just taking a rotary, like a drill on the wall, but a much bigger one, and pointing it down, spinning it until you reach as deep as the reservoir is. In Oman here, we drill up to 6.5 kilometers, straight vertical. Takes about 60 days. 60 days for 6 kilometers. But a lot of the wells, which are about 1,000 meters deep or 1 kilometer deep, we're actually drilling them in about 7 days. 7 days a kilometer. That's a lot quicker than a lot of the guys who do the roads, and we're underground, right? How do we do it? So on land, we've got land drilling rigs. In the ocean, we've got ocean platforms that drill. This is an actual photo of drilling rig in Oman by MB Petroleum. It's got a big derrick, as we call it, and we just push pipe into the ground physically with a motor and a drill bit at the bottom, drilling slowly, slowly, section by section. We do it every day, 24/7. This is another drilling rig. You've definitely seen these in photos. It's generally again some environmental video saying, hey, that's a lot of pollution there, that's just water. It's just water that's used in drilling activities, right? What you will probably not see is underneath that water is a lining. So we're very, very, very what we call HSE focused, health, safety, and environment, where we ensure the health of people, the safety of people, and the environment is not damaged in any way. So even this water that's placed in the desert is lined, and then after the well is drilled, this entire fleet moves to the next location. And even the desert is left exactly how it was found. And the same thing offshore. And the same thing on Bam Jumeirah, Saudi. Are you guys still with me? Okay. All right, so what happens after we drill? Now we've dug a hole in the ground. What happens in your grandparents' well? Have you noticed? There's no oil, I'm sure. But yeah, there's water, but there's also bricks, right? Surrounding it on the inside. We call that casing, and ours is metal. Why? Why do we need it? To maintain the pressure? Okay, no. Why do you case the insides of a hole? I'll give you an example, right? You go to the beach and you dig a hole. What happens eventually? Yeah, water comes, yeah. But say, for example, you're far away from the waves, right? And the water's coming. But what happens to the hole itself? It's going to collapse on itself, right? So imagine that hole is now 6 kilometers deep, right? It's going to collapse on itself in the first 10 meters. So what we do is we case it. So we put in long cylindrical pipes so that the well doesn't collapse on itself, right? It also ensures that anything that's produced from the reservoir does not affect the water table, the aquifers, your grandparents' well water, right? Because everything's connected. So we ensure that there's no leaks into the reservoirs, the water reservoirs up. What else do we do? How can we see what's in a well 1 kilometer deep? Anybody has an idea? Let's go. I want another answer from you. How do we see? Do we have cameras? Yeah, I'm looking at you. Yeah. Say again? Sonar? Yeah, when we're looking for oil, yeah. But what about in the well? Don't worry, let me ask one of your teachers as well. Ma'am, how do we see something? With eyes? That's sonar was a better answer. Okay, so how do we see? We've got different techniques, right? We call them logging tools, right? So we run the tools down, deep down, and we have electrical cables linked to them, and they transmit gamma rays or neutron waves, right? Or density. They've got density sensors. that allows us to understand the rock properties, the fluid properties, and everything downhole. But we still have to, what we call, stimulate the reservoir. And that's when, in a lot of cases, we frack, right? And you guys have heard about hydraulic fracturing or fracking. I'm sure you have, right? And it's got a very anti-environmental stance to it. But hydraulic fracturing is just injecting water at really high pressure so we can crack a rock. Hydraulic, water, fracking, fracturing, right? This is a hydraulic fracturing fleet. We were actually on this same location just 2 days ago, doing a well. Can anybody point to where the wellhead is? Can I point to where the wellhead is? I want to try, but that's where the well is. That small thing at the bottom of this rig. Everything else is just water and pumps. We need a lot of water, a lot of pumps, high pressure. To fracture a rock that is what we call so tight that in order to open it, to open the pores, it's 1 million gallons or more, right? That's another one. You can see the scale of operations. This entire fleet of trucks and pumps and containers moves from one location to the next every week. They get on location, they rig up, they frack, they rig down, and they move to the next location. Every week, 24/7. So once you've stimulated the reservoir, perforated, fracked, what do you do then? Now you've got oil and gas being produced in the well. I'm not going to use the same analogy as a Coke bottle, but if you know a Coca-Cola bottle and you shake it and you open it, all the oil and gas, all the Coca-Cola comes out, right? And then eventually it stops coming out. So how do you get it out then? You just pour it into your glass, right? But you can't pour an oil and gas well, correct? So let me start with people on this side because I can't see them. So let me ask somebody on this side, how do you get a Coca-Cola or Coca-Cola out of a Coca-Cola bottle without pouring it? There you go. So the smart people are always at the back, like I was. That's absolutely correct, right? She uses straw. But what is a straw technically, right? Suction? Great. Everybody is actually now paying attention. Great. In school, I mean. So it's pretty much creating a low pressure on one end, where you've got a bit of a higher pressure at the other end, right? So as your reservoir pressure drops, in order to get the oil out, you have to create a lower pressure at surface that balances the reservoir pressure as well as gravity, or what we call hydrostatic, right? If you can overcome both of that, hey presto, you got oil on surface. Sometimes the reservoir pressure is strong enough to do that by itself, but eventually it's not. So then we use what's called artificial lift, or a straw, or a pump, or a submersible pump. Or, nobody mentioned though, is instead of a straw, you could just pump some more CO2, and now you can again shake the bottle, right? We do that as well. We re-inject gas, and then we produce. It's called gas lift. Sometimes we even inject steam. What do you do when you have honey? You heat it up, right? How do we heat it up? We inject steam, right? We inject steam in an injector well. We push the steam across the reservoir, and then we produce in a producer well. Again, you've probably seen this. Let me see if okay. This is the wellhead, right? Everything else is just a pump. Why is it so big? Why does it look like a donkey? It's actually interesting engineering, right? What it does is it moves up and down so that these rods here activate and move a pump at the bottom of the well up and down. Maybe 1 kilometer deep, maybe 2 kilometers deep. Think about the weight of those rods, right? In order to balance both the upwards and downwards movement, you've got an opposing weight here that moves around. It moves round and round based on the upstroke and downstroke, right? Balancing the weight, right? And then you've got the beam on the top, which is why it's called the beam pump. This is an oil field. You can see all the beam pumps. You can see all the ESPs. You can see some of the steam as well that's injected in some places. Well, you can't see it. It's in the lines. So after you produce it up to surface, what do you do with it? Now it's black, it's thick. In some cases, it's light, it's clear, it's very vaporized, which is not good either. It's got poisonous gases like H2S and CO2, where you take one breath and you can't smell again, or you take 2 breaths and you're done. Yeah, not kidding. If there's a small leak and you take a couple of breaths of H2S, it doesn't end well, right? So a lot of that comes out along with the oil and gas, right? So what do? You've got to first process it. You have to process it into something you can send to a refinery, because they're not going to accept your water, they're not going to accept your sand, they're not going to accept your H2S. So you have to dehydrate it, you have to desulfurize it, and then you send it to a refinery. Remember the midstream part? Export. In Oman, for example, you've got 140 oil fields in the interior of the country. But all the oil fields move that crude oil to the refinery here in Mina Al Fahal, in Kurum, at our side, right? And then once it reaches the refinery, now your chemistry teacher can probably tell you more about it than I can, right? But in simple methods, you just fractionally distillate it to get, don't worry, I'm not going to quiz you. You just fractionally distillate it to then eventually produce what you put in, or your parents put in their cars, right? But also a lot of other things. And I'll come to the other things in a bit. This is process engineering. Drilling, reservoir, production, process. You won't realize it now, but it pretty much covers all of engineering degrees, right? Chemical, civil, mechanical, IT, you name it. That's RHIP, Rabab Harweel Integrated Process Station, or whatever they call it, here in Oman, in the south of Oman. It was a $5 billion station in the south of Oman. This is Duqm Refinery. Again, $8 billion. Just came online a year ago. A lot of tanks to store the crude oil. A lot of tanks on the other side to store the refined product. And a lot of crude, but very purposeful and efficient processes involved in all those towers between the tanks. This is a process facility and production facility offshore. I've been on one. I've been on one where the waves came all the way up to here in the North Sea. I've worked on one, right? Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, like I said, what is petroleum used in? What is the crude oil that comes out used in? Vehicles is fuels, gasoline, yeah, lubricants, engine oil, motor oil, yeah. What else? Planes, yeah, that's just vehicles and transport, yeah. What else? The roads that are built, right? That's bitumen, asphalt. Plastics, every plastic here in this room comes from petroleum. Every synthetic, every composite comes from petroleum. Every pipe, every container, synthetic rubbers, tires, nylons. What else? Pharmaceuticals, some furnitures, medical products, medical supplies, even things like ink, candles, waxes, electronics. Anything else that girls can think of? Most of your cosmetics and makeup. Say girls, teachers included, guys included. Shaving cream, I mean, you know. Not even scratch the surface, right? Can your electric cars make all of these things? It's very difficult, no? Yep. So, let's move on to the final phase of the presentation. Where is the industry headed? It's a question that a lot of us want to know the answer to. A lot of people are working on, a lot of politicians are working on, but it's just as relevant to you and everybody in this room as it is to me, as it is to people, rulers of the region, prime ministers, presidents. You hear about it every day. Trump is annoyed with Modi, right? You know why? Because Modi is buying Russian oil. Why is Modi buying Russian oil? Why is India buying Russian oil? Because India is a net importer of crude oil. We produce 1 million barrels and we import and we consume 4 million barrels, and growing. The US consumes 20 million barrels, right? So where do we get that net 3 or 4 million barrels from? Places like Abu Dhabi, places like Russia, right? But as a net importer, it's not always as easy as buying oil. You have to make long-term trade deals. But anyway, that's a story for a different day. Where's the industry headed, right? A lot of oil and gas companies are now changing their name to energy companies. Still means the same thing, right? The only difference is the people who are the most, in my opinion, knowledgeable about the energy transition is oil and gas companies. It seems like a bit of hypocrisy, but oil and gas companies are very, very involved in the energy transition. And we discuss this almost on a monthly basis. The reason being is we have all the resources, the facilities, the know-how to drill geothermal wells. We have a lot of solar in our fields, a lot of wind in our fields, a lot of facilities for power generation, right? So the best place you can be to get into sustainable, in my view, sustainable energy production is in the energy companies, right? But it's an energy transition, not an energy truncation. There's a lot of electrical vehicles on the roads these days in California and a lot of places around the world. But where does that electricity come from? I don't want to bring up the chart again, but only about 5% comes from renewables, even now. So the rest still comes from coal, natural gas, mainly, and some oil. But the key is here to transition from oil and gas into the next phase of energy. At the moment, one of the things that we do is we're focused on net zero, right? What does net zero mean? Anybody know? All it means is all the carbon, all the emissions that you produce, you recover. Either from the exhaust of your car or from the air that balances out all the emissions that you already make. Right? So if I'm releasing, let's say, 15 tons of CO2 every month, I need to find a way to pull back 15 tons of CO2 and then sequester it in the ground or collect it in the ground, right? So for that we use things like direct carbon capture, direct air capture processes. This is just a big fan, just a big fan that collects air, passes it through a membrane, removes the CO2, and then injects it into the ground. So that's one way to reach net zero. What's another way? Synthetic fuels, right? What's synthetic fuels? Convert those emissions into fuel. Get the carbon, we know hydrocarbon is hydrogen and carbon. Get the carbon from the atmosphere, get the hydrogen from the water, put it together, create synthetic diesel. Now you're net zero again. What's another way? Let's just take the carbon dioxide and then re-inject into the ground and now create more oil, right? We do that as well. We do that here, right? And then eventually, another thing that we do is we take, you've seen the flare in Mina Fahal, the flare of the big candle, right? So you know what we're doing? Well, don't tell anyone because it's not out yet. But we're converting that into power, and then we're using the power to create Bitcoin or data mine. It's free power, right? It's anyway being burnt. Not the Mina Fahal one, but the one in a field. There's a pilot project going on, starting up pretty soon. So that's another thing you can do. Why do we not do it everywhere? We're still working on the economics, right? We don't really know whether it's going to be economical enough. Maybe someday. And then eventually hydrogen, right? Oman spends $3 billion on hydrogen, is what you've heard all the time, right? Has it started yet? Not really. But eventually, all these facilities that you saw earlier, the one that can handle natural gas, without a lot of modification can handle hydrogen, right? So this is why the industry is trending towards synthetic fuels and hydrogen. Maybe when you guys are my age, I'm not that old to be honest, but when you're my age, in the next 20 years, right? You may be standing here and telling some of the kids your age about hydrogen and about how you were in a career talk about oil and gas and it's not relevant anymore. Maybe, we'll see, right? Is this the future? I don't know. It could be. This is proposed hydrogen facility at an offshore port in Saudi, right? So is this what it's going to look like? I don't know. It'll probably look like some of the grungy oil and gas photos that I shared with you. Not as beautiful as this is supposed to look, but it could be the future, right? Who knows? We don't know yet, right? So, the million-dollar question. Should you do a petroleum engineering degree, right? Is that a good major? Not a lot of schools offer that, right? In India, we've got the IITs that do what's called petroleum engineering and mining, right? Or petroleum engineering and natural gas engineering. Really smart people there. I've met them. You've got international schools in the US, Texas A&M, a few other schools, Rice College. You've got really good schools in the UK and Australia. But what are the pros, right? One of the pros is you can pretty much tell your friends, teach them every day, because they'll have no idea what it's about. You could probably go out and tell your classmates tomorrow about this, and they will have no idea, right? So it's a niche and fun thing. It's got a lot of geopolitical stuff. It's got a lot of interesting engineering. It's not just chemical. If you think you're good at chemistry, it's not just chemical. Chemistry is a very small part of oil and gas, at least upstream. It's a global industry. You can work offshore Africa, Guyana, right? Western Australia, Malaysia, obviously the Middle East, India, right? Is it the same as IT? Probably not. You're not going to be sitting in an office most of the time. But you get to meet interesting people in interesting phases of life. You tend to think of yourself as making a difference in a sense. It's a small difference in terms of, I don't know, keeping the lights on. So you've got that. And then you won't realize this now, but we're a little less, or very less, corporate, right? We've got all the big fancy skyscrapers around the world, yeah, but we're very less corporate, right? And I don't know if you'll know what that means now, but we don't want to be in school when we're working. Let's put it that way. We don't have to be, right? And another thing which you've heard about a lot is the high earning potential. And why is there a high earning potential? There's high earning potential because you've got to spend a lot of time away from family. In some cases, you've got to do a lot of traveling. In some cases, you've got to go the extra mile. There's no holidays, there's no vacations, right? I told you, the oil and gas industry doesn't sleep. And that's why you're compensated accordingly. And what are the cons? So one thing we didn't touch on is the oil price. So in the industry, it's very cyclic. So it's very up and down in terms of oil price. It tends to affect not just the oil and gas industry, but trickles down to every other industry in an oil exporting country like ours here in Oman, right? So do you have a job in the downturn? What if you graduate in the downturn like I did, right? It's tough, man. I finished 4th in my class, 2 master's degrees, didn't get an interview, right? I probably interviewed to 50 companies every week and didn't get an interview. The downturn, right? Everybody's firing. Nobody's hiring. But somebody told me then is that when you graduate at those times, it builds character, right? You find interesting ways on making a career. What about work location? Everybody's got an idea that once you go to college and graduate, you're going to be sitting in an office all day, right? A lot of the times you don't. A lot of the times you don't have your 8 to 4s and 9 to 5s, or I don't know, in your case, 7 to 2s, right? And a lot of the times they're away from home. But that's a lot of fun as well after you graduate, right? You'd be so interested to get out while everybody else is in one of the IT companies. You're on an oil field. Right? This is my last slide, but it's an important message, right? I've been where you are right now, but the one thing that always stands true is I know you guys are getting into some important exams. You're going to get into college soon. You're going to, at some point, get into, apply for jobs, right? Some of you may do well. Some of you are doing well right now. Some of you may not do, the ones doing well right now may not do well in college. The ones not doing so well right now may do a lot better in college when you're actually interested in what you're learning, right? But the most important thing, as our chess champion said, is keep persevering, right? Because the cream always rises to the top. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ian Rosario, for the heartfelt and inspiring session. You have inspired us to look at energy diversification, sustainability, and digital transformation with a new perspective. We shall now open the floor for a brief question and answer session. Students, this is the opportunity to interact directly with Mr. Ian Rosario to seek guidance, clarify your doubts, or share your thoughts about pursuing the field of oil and gas energy. I request our audience to kindly raise their hands if they have a question, and a team will bring a microphone to you. Let's make the session interactive, engaging, and full of meaningful insights.
Okay, who's first? We'll go with the girl. Yep, go ahead. I can hear you. Don't worry. Yeah.
What is a typical day like in your life? I mean, what is a normal day?
I thought I shared a photo of me in the rig, but I understand your question, right? What's a normal day in my life? I just got 4 calls in the last 5 minutes because somebody who works under me is in the field, desperately trying to make a decision as to what to do, right? Do we connect the pump to a high pressure line? I should actually take that call, but I'll answer your question first. What to do? Every day is a new challenge. It's not what you think about as challenges. Not every day is a fun challenge. Yesterday we were at the airport trying to custom clear a tool that was flown in from Houston 3 days ago that we have to take straight to Nimmer, which is 800 kilometers away, and arrive before lunchtime today. Otherwise, we have a big penalty. A lot of people at the customs don't care about you and your problems, right? But you still have to find a way to get that tool out and to location. Is that engineering? I don't know. A lot of what we do and a lot of what you will do in any form of work is solve problems. But in order to solve problems, you need to understand better than anybody else in terms of what your line of work is, right? So these days, since now I'm a manager, I go to work, get woken up by my 1-year-old, go to work, sit at work, look at all the different projects, evaluate them where it's at the beginning of the week, right? A lot of emails back and forth to our clients, who are big oil and gas companies. Set up a schedule for the week. Attend meetings where a lot of what they discuss is planning and design. Plan, 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 plan. Design, 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 design. Why? So that when you're giving a career talk, you don't get a call because everybody knows what they need to do in all circumstances, including the contingencies, right? So a lot of what I do these days is planning and design work, preparation work, and then eventually getting stuff, what we call, to the oil field and the location, to then supervise the work. A lot of what I just showed you, a lot of the work in the oil field. And then if I'm lucky, I get to come back home at 5 o'clock. If I'm not, I'm sitting at the airport till 10 p.m. trying to clear something, right? So yeah, the good thing is I tend to get weekends these days. I tend to not have to go to the field as much because I've actually done all of that in the first 5 or 6 years in my career. So now I get to do the boring stuff, which is sit in the office. Right? Okay, somebody here, yeah.
What are the challenges you faced, like when you were in this industry, and like how did you overcome these challenges?
Not to be demoralizing, but one of the biggest challenges that I faced was actually proving yourself when you get in at an entry level, right? So, like I said, the industry is very cyclic, and there are a lot of people with a lot of experience still sitting there. Oh, they were in my time, right? Somebody with 60 years experience is still sitting there as an old school oil and gas man, right? And he still wants to do the same thing he did in the 60s, right? I heard the social influencer talk about AI, but we use AI too, right? We use AI to make presentations sometimes, right? But a lot of what we do, you can't really use AI, right? You got to use old school first principle methodology. It can point you in the right direction, but it's not going to close a valve for you. So sometimes you got to do it old school. But a lot of the times you got to bring in new technologies to be able to change that. It's a slow and gradual process, but you need to. So the biggest challenge that I faced in the beginning and now is the implementation of new technologies, because not all new technologies work, and not all new technologies work all the time. But the tried and trusted do. Does that mean you don't innovate constantly? Constantly. Don't stop learning. Don't stop innovating. Don't let your parents stop learning. Don't let your teachers stop learning. Don't let your kids stop learning. You yourself don't stop learning. It doesn't matter if it's watching a YouTube video every other night. It doesn't matter if it's reading a research paper. Just constantly update yourself on everything, anything and everything. But yeah, the biggest challenge is implementing new technologies. Done? Let me take one last question quickly. I know we've got no time left. Go ahead.
My question is, how do you get practical experience, like while leading students?
I'm glad you asked that, because that's something that I really needed to touch upon. One of the main things when what you're doing in college is, what do you do, right? For practical experience. It's a really difficult question. In the first year after the first year of college, I had about 3 months off. And I spent the entire holiday vacationing, right? I thought I deserved it. I finished my board exams, got a really good score, and pretty much partied for 3 months, right? In the second year, did the same thing, right? In the third year, you realize, okay, now it's time to sort of apply to companies, right? What I notice these days is a lot of students come to me first year in. I need to do an internship. I need to get a job. I need to start early. I need to, sometimes even out of school, right? It's a very competitive environment that you guys are going to get into. Oman's a very small place, right? When you get into the real world, there's a lot of people competing for very, very little work, unfortunately. So, yes, it's important to start early. Reach out to me. Reach out to a lot of people that you meet in this week. Reach out to everybody that you know, network. Don't feel bad about asking your dad to put you in touch with his colleague or putting you in touch with, somebody in the neighborhood. Reach out to them, ask them about their experiences. Ask them to advise you about what to do in that free time in college. But most importantly, remember one thing. It's not only about your degree. There's another 1,000, 10,000 people doing what you're doing. It's about your personality. So don't lose out on the other experiences in college either. Do a part-time job. Get in the service industry. I used to be a bartender in the UK for 2 years, part-time, right? It gives you the opportunity to meet with random people, improve your soft skills, your social skills, so that when you go in front, you may eventually be able to converse and convey all the ideas that have popped into your head during your college degree. So while internships and professional internships are important, building your character through social interactions is just as vital, and generally is the main driver coming from somebody who interviews people a lot and hires a lot of people. It's the main driver to pick the right candidate for a work. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for answering that so insightfully and for taking every question with such patience and warmth.
May I now request Assistant Vice Principal Ms. Premlata M. to kindly present a memento to Mr. Ian Rosario as a token of our appreciation and gratitude.
Thank you, ma'am. Really nice meeting you. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mom.
Wait. Done. Thank you.